Have you ever placed your hand on your chest and felt something heavy pressing against it, but when you check, there's nothing there? No pain you can measure. No fever, no wound. Just a weight, a strange ache that doesn't belong to the body, but lives inside it. It hides beneath the heartbeat. It whispers behind your breath. And no matter how you try to explain it, no doctor, no friend, no mirror truly sees it. Because what you feel is not in the flesh. It's something else, something deeper. And if you've ever felt it, you know exactly what I mean. They'll call it anxiety, stress, psychosomatic discomfort. But the truth is older than all these labels. 1,000 years ago, Ibn Sina knew what modern minds are still beginning to understand. The soul can hurt, and when it does, it borrows the language of the body to scream. You see, we are trained to believe that the body and the soul are separate. One is science, the other is myth. But what if they're not divided? What if they're lovers, entangled in every breath you take, every pain you ignore? That ache behind your chest, it may not be a muscle crying out. It may be your spirit, suffocating beneath years of silence. And no pill can cure a soul that was never listened to. Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, wasn't just a physician. He was a listener. He treated people who bled, and those who didn't. Those whose pain had no physical mark, but lived in sighs, in sleeplessness, in that haunted look a person gives when they smile with their mouth but not with their eyes. He knew something we often forget today, that the body is a messenger, and pain is its letter. So when your chest tightens at night, when you lie down and feel like you're being crushed under something invisible, maybe, just maybe, your body isn't broken. Maybe it's just telling you a truth you've buried for too long. We live in a world of distractions. Screens, deadlines, noise. We scroll past our feelings like old emails we're too tired to read. But the body never forgets. It remembers every heartbreak, every betrayal, every time you forced yourself to smile when you wanted to cry. And when those memories pile up, they press against your chest. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. You were never meant to carry it all in silence. So if you're listening to this now, and your chest feels like it's holding something unspoken, pause. Not to fix it, not to explain it, just to feel it. Put your hand on your heart. Close your eyes, and say, I hear you. This is not the end of your strength. It's the beginning of your return. Back to yourself. Back to the parts you've ignored. The pain isn't your enemy. It's your invitation. And maybe, like Ibn Sina once wrote, the soul will rise, not when the body is healed, but when the heart is finally heard. There's a story, told in hushed voices among scholars, of a prince who fell ill. No wound, no fever, no known disease. His body lay weak, his eyes dim. Doctors came and left, puzzled. None could explain why the young man, once full of life, was now fading like a flame with no air. Until Ibn Sina entered. He didn't just check the pulse. He watched the boy's expression. He noticed how it changed, slightly, when certain names were mentioned. Names of cities, of people, of places from memory. He didn't see a sick body. He saw a drowning soul. And with delicate wisdom, he traced the illness, not to the stomach or the brain, but to the heart. A heart that loved, a soul that ached in silence. The prince was not dying of disease, he was dying of longing. Ibn Sina understood something that science is only now beginning to rediscover. Emotional wounds bleed too, but they bleed inward. And sometimes, they do more damage than broken bones or failing lungs. He believed the soul and body were not enemies, but intertwined. If one suffers, the other echoes it. And so he treated both. Not just with herbs or surgery, but with questions. with listening, with time. Because sometimes, healing doesn't come from medicine. It comes from being understood. Can you imagine that kind of attention today? Where someone looks past the symptoms, into the silence behind them. Not every pain needs a pill. Some need permission. Permission to feel, to grieve, to want, to be soft in a world that demands hardness. But we were never designed to be made of steel. We are creatures of breath and blood, of dreams and memories. And sometimes, what we carry inside is heavier than what we carry in our hands. Ibn Sina once wrote, "The physician must know the causes of joy and sorrow, for they are the roots of all illness." How many of your choices today, your fears, your habits, even your sicknesses, have been shaped by a sorrow you never spoke of? How much of your exhaustion is not from what you do, but from what you suppress? We have become experts in pretending. Experts in hiding pain behind busy schedules, behind laughter, behind success. But the soul is patient. It waits. And if ignored long enough, it begins to cry out in ways the body can no longer hide. You might think you're just tired, just stressed, just not yourself. But maybe, like that prince, you're heartsick. And no amount of sleep, coffee, or distraction will heal that. Maybe what you need is not escape, but return. Return to what aches, to what's been buried, to the parts of you that still remember what it was like to feel alive. Ibn Sina's genius was not in creating something new, but in remembering something old. Something we all know deep down. That healing is not about silencing pain. It's about understanding it. So if you've been feeling something behind your chest, a pressure you can't explain, know this. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're responding to something real, something human, something ancient. And that response, that whisper from within, is not asking for a cure. It's asking for your presence. Sit with it, breathe with it, name it if you can, or just listen. Because the soul, like the body, speaks. And Ibn Sina taught us that every ache is a conversation waiting to be heard. You try to breathe, but the air feels thin. You look around, but nothing feels real. You touch your chest, and that ache is still there. Not the kind of pain that makes you scream, but the kind of pain that whispers, "You're not okay." There's no diagnosis, no scan, no lab test, no doctor that tells you what's wrong. Because the pain isn't in your body, it's in the soul. And you know it. Deep down, beneath all the distractions, you know this pain is not physical. It's personal. It's old. It's yours. Ibn Sina once wrote that every illness begins in the soul, and only later appears in the body. He wasn't speaking in metaphors. He was describing a truth we've forgotten. That the heart carries wounds we never grieve. That the body speaks the language of the soul when we stop listening. How many times have you buried emotions beneath a smile? How many times have you pushed past exhaustion? Because the world doesn't wait for you to rest? We've become experts at pretending. Pretending to be fine. Pretending to be strong. Pretending we've moved on. But the body knows. It keeps the score. And one day, when you're least expecting it, it forces you to listen. That tightness in your chest. That heaviness when you wake up. That emptiness in moments that should feel full. It's the soul, knocking on the walls of the body, saying, "I'm still here. And I'm not healed." Ibn Sina believed that emotions weren't just fleeting feelings. They were currents of energy that move through the body, and when they're blocked, they create illness. Anger becomes fire in the liver. Grief weighs down the lungs. Fear drains the kidneys. And unspoken pain builds a home behind your ribs, right where the heart lives. But here's the miracle. Just as the soul can wound the body, it can also heal it. Not with pills, not with diagnoses, but with presence, with truth, with the courage to sit with the pain and ask it why it's here. Because this ache isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to wake you up, to remind you of something you lost long ago. A promise you made to yourself. A dream you abandoned to survive. A version of you that never got to speak. So ask the pain what it wants to say. Don't silence it with distractions. Don't numb it with productivity. Just listen. Sometimes, the healing doesn't begin with action. It begins with attention. With finally noticing that the ache behind your chest is a messenger. A letter from your soul, sealed long ago. Waiting, hoping, that one day you'd have the courage to open it. Sometimes healing doesn't begin with answers. It begins with honesty. Not the kind of honesty we offer others, but the kind we've denied ourselves for years. It begins when we finally admit, I'm tired of pretending. Pretending to be fine. Pretending to be certain. Pretending to be strong when we're anything but. For years, we become performers in our own lives. Smiling on cue. Laughing when it's expected. Holding ourselves together just enough to survive the next moment. And we wear masks so well. We forget what our real face even looks like. But masks are heavy. They weigh down the soul. And one day, often without warning, they crack. Not from a dramatic breakdown, but from a simple silence. A morning where you wake up and realize you don't want to play the part anymore. That moment is sacred. It's not weakness. It's the beginning of strength. Ibn Sina, in his silent reflections, seemed to understand this. He didn't speak of healing as conquering the self. He spoke of returning to it. Not reshaping, but revealing. Healing, in his view, wasn't about fixing what's broken, but about rediscovering what had been buried. The child who once felt deeply, before being told to toughen up. The teenager who cried alone, because crying in front of others was shameful. The adult who carries the grief of unlived dreams, smiling through them, while something inside quietly dies. Ibn Sina saw how we fragment, how the soul becomes splintered, not by catastrophe, but by years of tiny betrayals, betrayals of our own emotions, our own boundaries, our own truths. And so, the journey back is not grand. It is not public. It is private, quiet, unseen. It begins with giving yourself permission. Permission to say, I'm not okay, and not rush to fix it. Permission to rest, not because you've earned it, but because you're human. Permission to feel sadness, not as an obstacle, but as a message. These small, radical acts of self-honesty are where rebuilding begins. Because when we stop lying to ourselves, the pain becomes clearer. And once it's clear, it can be held, witnessed, so it doesn't have to scream anymore. Some days, you will feel stronger. You'll take deep breaths and feel light again. Other days, the old wounds will whisper, and you'll want to run back into old masks. But resist. Let them stay cracked. Let the light in. Rebuilding isn't about becoming a better version of yourself. It's about becoming a truer one. And the truth is, sometimes, being yourself means being messy, uncertain, quiet, and soft. It means honoring your pace, even when the world tells you to hurry. It means not chasing healing like a finish line, but living it as a gentle rhythm. One moment of awareness, one breath of acceptance, one decision to be real, again and again. Ibn Sina didn't prescribe formulas. He offered space, space to listen, reflect, and re-enter the self. He reminded us that the heart has its own intelligence, its own language, and sometimes we must stop thinking and start feeling. The mind may search for logic, but the heart asks for presence. To sit with your wounds without immediately reaching for distraction. To feel your anxiety without calling it failure. To admit that sometimes you don't know what's wrong, only that something is. And that's okay. Not everything needs a label to deserve care. This is the unseen work. The quiet revolution. The choosing of self over performance. Integrity over image. It doesn't look impressive from the outside. It looks like saying no when you used to say yes. It looks like going home early. It looks like staring out a window, letting your soul breathe for the first time in years. And eventually, those small acts of truth become a life. Not a perfect life, but a life that's real. And realness is peace. So if you're here, struggling to take off the mask, know this. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not failing. You're just returning. And return is the most sacred form of progress. You may lose people on this path. People who liked your mask more than your face. But the ones who stay will see you. And more importantly, you will see you. That is the gift. You were never meant to play a role forever. You were meant to become. There comes a day, after the unraveling, after the silence, after the tears no one saw, when something stirs, a new kind of stillness. Not the stillness of numbness, but of presence. The ache behind your ribs doesn't vanish, but it softens. It stops screaming. It becomes familiar. A part of you, not your enemy. Like an old wound that no longer hurts, but taught you how to walk differently. This is when you realize healing was never about forgetting the pain. It was about learning to live beside it, without fear. Ibn Sina once wrote that the body and soul are deeply linked, and that every illness of the body is mirrored by a wound in the soul. But he also believed something even more profound, that the soul can guide the body back to balance. That awareness is medicine. Not pills, not escapes, not hollow affirmations, but the deep, courageous act of sitting with yourself long enough to hear what you've been ignoring. And when you do, you don't find perfection. You find roots, a grounding you didn't know you were missing. You begin to choose differently, not out of fear, but out of knowing. You say no to things that once defined you. You say yes to moments of stillness. You stop trying to be who you should be, and start becoming who you already are. There's beauty in that, not the kind that impresses, but the kind that comforts, the kind that whispers. You are allowed to grow slowly. You don't need to bloom for anyone. You don't need to prove your worth. You were always worthy, even in the dark. In fact, especially in the dark. That's where the seeds were planted. That's where the soil softened. That's where the rain came. And now, the garden grows. Not loud, not showy, but real. With every breath, you feel more at home in your chest. More anchored in your spine. More accepting of your softness. Because this isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering the person you were before the world told you to hide. The child who felt deeply. Who asked too many questions. Who loved without guarding their heart. That child didn't vanish. They waited. And now, they welcome you back. So if today still feels heavy, if the ache hasn't gone, if you're wondering whether you're healing at all, remember, healing isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It grows like moss, quietly, persistently, patiently. One moment of self-kindness. 1 hour of rest. 1 breath of honesty. This is the path, not to escape your pain, but to walk beside it. To let it teach you. Because maybe the wound wasn't punishment. Maybe it was the path. The key. The crack where the light was waiting to come through. Ibn Sina didn't leave us maps. But he left questions. Reflections. A mirror to hold against our chests and ask, what is this pain really trying to say? And if you're willing to listen, truly listen, you may discover that the pain you carried was never trying to destroy you. It was trying to wake you. Because maybe, You weren't lost. You were just buried. And now, you're returning. Welcome back.